Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. Steve, if Tony Scanzuso says you're good to go, you're good to go. The MC said Phil Trippy started wrestling in 5th grade, but I heard a rumor that when Phil was born, he was wrestling with the umbilical cord. So. For the students here tonight, you've heard some stories about some amazing athletes. I was not one of them. But I do want to thank the team from the Wall of Fame that put tonight's dinner together, as well as yesterday's event at Maryvale. It takes a lot of work to organize an event like this. This is probably on par with a wedding at least, and your efforts show. And so, thanks to my family and friends as well, who traveled from near and far to join us tonight. My father flew in from Florida. My wife, who is still active duty, is currently serving in the Middle East and could not make it. But it's ironic or interesting that early in my career, when I spent all my time deployed, she was home raising our daughter Kathleen and my son Trevor while going to law school that the Army was funding. And now late in her career, I'm at home raising Trevor while she's deployed. So we've had a little role inversion there. And unfortunately, Kathleen is away at college, but interestingly enough, she surprised me with a note in our program tonight. So I wish she could be here as well. And like some of our other speakers have mentioned, it's been 30 years, or over 30 years since I graduated from Maryvale, but in many ways it feels like yesterday. Thank you for selecting me as a distinguished alumni. It is an honor and privilege to be here, and one I'm happy to share with Bill Fittner. I wish he were here, in fact, to join us for the festivities, because although we've not met in person, I admire and respect his work, and our paths have indirectly crossed in many more ways than most realize. You see, in 2001, after the Islamic jihadists attacked us on 9/11, Army Special Forces Colonel John Mulholland led the 5th Special Forces Group into Afghanistan. Most recently, Bill played Army Special Forces Colonel John Mulholland in the movie 12 Strong. And in October, I retired as an Army Special Forces Colonel. But it doesn't end there. You see, I was selected to command the United States Military Free Fall School by John's cousin, Army Special Forces Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Mulholland. And if you fast forward to 2010, when I was commanding the United States Army Parachute Team, or the Golden Knights, it was General John Mulholland who helped get me out of trouble after one of our jumpers landed on a flagpole at Texas Rangers Stadium. But that's another story. So back to 2002, Bill played a Special Forces soldier in the epic movie Black Hawk Down. It was about the epic and heroic efforts of Task Force Ranger during the Battle of Mogadishu in Somalia. In preparation for that role, Bill had been trained by soldiers of the 7th Special Forces Group, which was my old unit. And one of the technical advisors on the set, and a veteran of the Battle of Mogadishu, was my friend, Army Ranger Kenny Thomas. Now, Black Hawk Down was released shortly after 9/11. And at that point, I was running a newly established program to prepare off-the-street recruits to join the Special Forces by completing the physically, mentally, and emotionally demanding Special Forces assessment and selection. So in order to prepare some of those SF babies, these students, to understand what they were getting themselves into and what would be expected of them in combat, we took them to see the movie Black Hawk Down. Fast forward about 10.5 years to the Islamic jihadist attacks of 9/11/2012 in Benghazi, Libya. And one of those very students that I took to see Bill in that movie, Master Sergeant David Halbrunner, would be awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions that day. DSC, Distinguished Service Cross, is the second highest award for valor, behind only the Congressional Medal of Honor. And yet, Master Sergeant Halbrunner, for his actions attempting to save and ultimately recover the remains of Ambassador Chris Stevens, received that award. So were the seeds of valor planted in a theater watching Bill in Black Hawk Down? We may never know. But the reality is, my brother, Jared, jokingly summed it up this way. Maybe Bill got scared. He said, Bill is famous because he played a Special Forces colonel. but you are a Special Forces colonel. Regardless, I want to thank Bill because he did have a respectful portrayal of our Special Forces soldiers, and I wish him the best. And hopefully we'll meet at some point in the future, and I look forward to having a beer and sharing some stories with him. I want to thank you again for selecting me as a distinguished alumni. It is ironic that Maryvale would never have selected me as a distinguished student. My grades were B's and C's. I never made National Honor Society. I did skip lunch to go to art class. And after 3 years of Spanish with Mr. Schwab, did pay off because while I was working in Honduras, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Panama, Puerto Rico, he never taught me the word ametralladora, which means machine gun. But everything else I put to work, so. Maryvale also would not have selected me as a distinguished athlete because, as Phil and his brother can attest, I was no great wrestler. The only thing I remember about wrestling was getting my ass kicked. I played sports all 4 years, nothing distinguished about that athletic career. Ran track for 3 years, and for some reason my senior year I thought it would be zero experience, a great idea to go play football. And so although I made the team, I never played a snap. And so despite this, Maryvale selected me as a distinguished alumni. So why? I told the students yesterday, it's because what you do now matters. And so we also talked yesterday about sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs. And that's a vignette from Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who wrote a book that was nominated for the Pulitzer called On Killing. And while I was a Special Forces Detachment Commander, I used that book to help me figure out how to best train my team to ensure we were massively lethal if we ever needed to be. And that book is also the same reason why I will take my son shooting with me, but I will not let him play first-person shooter games. And I hope that you as parents will not either. Because there are things we do in the military when it comes to killing bad guys. And the way we train our soldiers, we are disciplined, we respect the rule of law, we execute in accordance with American values and American standards, and we are very distinguishing when we pick and choose our targets. And those first-person shooter games do not instill that discipline. And this is an important point for parents to pay attention to. What are your children doing, and what are they learning, and why? So, how does one go from being an undistinguished student to a distinguished alumni? Excuse me for Marco Rubio a moment. Steve Jobs talked about connecting the dots backwards. And in retrospect, I realized two things were key to my success. One were the Boy Scouts, and two, Maryvale athletics. So the Boy Scouts taught me the value of self-reliance, teamwork. It taught me the skills to survive in the woods, alone, harsh conditions, be comfortable in that environment for long periods. But it was Maryvale athletics that pushed me and challenged me and tested me mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so Phil Trippi, one of our distinguished athletes, one of my classmates and fellow wrestlers, his older brother, and I shared a coach who emphasized the importance, the difference between pain and injury. I won't use the same example I used yesterday, but once you learn that, you can push yourself further than others, and that is important. Because I watched plenty of people who were bigger than me, faster than me, stronger than me, wash out and quit when it came time to train. And why? All because they quit. So although I made it through U.S. Army Ranger School on my first attempt, I had to go through Special Forces Assessment and Selection twice, and I did recycle the Special Forces Qualification course because I had to repeat the officer trek within the allocated 72 hours. But in spite of all these other challenges, I had a successful career because I didn't quit. And so a friend and classmate of mine, Tom Etzel, who's here with us tonight, requested a couple vignettes because Buffalo's not a particularly heavy military town and you guys might not have a lot of chances for this. So he asked, what's a career in Special Forces like? And give us a couple examples or stories or vignettes. So at risk of going too quickly, I will tell you that I did sleep in a 4-star hotel in Quito, Ecuador one night, and the very next night I found myself being flea bitten in Lago Agrio, 10 kilometers from the Colombian border. And we went out buying groceries in a town that the Colombian rebels, the FARC, used for recreation, rest, recuperation, and recovery. Interesting dichotomy there. So on the site survey for a mission to Ecuador, I went with my team medic. We always go in advance and check things out and figure out what we need before the team comes in. And while we were there, we heard about a couple of American oil workers were taken hostage. So we made a mental note. At that point, Ecuador was the kidnapping capital of the world. So we come back, fast forward about 3 months later, we're down there with our team, and our mission is to train a jungle battalion to help prepare for operations against the Colombian rebels, the FARC. And we're just doing live fire training with them. We had nothing to do with it. We're at the range one day, we're all kitted up, full guns and all that, paint on the face and everything like that. Well, it turns out the hostage takers got tired of feeding these Americans, and they let them go down the road. So we take a break from the range, and we're sitting there having us an empanada. There's a full Special Forces team, 12 guys, full kit, guns, everything, having an empanada. And this hostage comes walking down the road and sees us, and he thinks we're there to rescue him. Sorry, guy. But we did get him escorted to the embassy, and we got him out there. And okay. We did get him some lunch, so that was interesting. But I do remember running airborne operations for a battalion of Ecuadorians, giving the jump commands in Spanish at their airport, and watching an Ecuadorian battalion of paratroopers land on the airfield where we told them to, and watching our commander, who was a meatball, land in a pond next to the airfield. We trained the 1st Colombian Counter-Narcotics Battalion in Tolamaida, Colombia. Phenomenal experiences. I conducted live fire riverine operations with Special Forces Detachment 773. I set off more explosives than we probably ever should have. I did have bomb-sniffing dogs go through my backpack coming through the Miami airport, and had to explain to them that I did have explosives in there, but they weren't there anymore. I jump mastered military freefall operations for students at night with zero illumination into a blacked out drop zone on multiple occasions. And I survived over 700 military freefall and static line airborne operations. And I've got the bad back and the bad neck to prove it. But I also remember coordinating combat operations for SEAL Team 6 and the Rangers in Afghanistan. And then going out and smoking a cigar, a Cuban cigar, on a Friday night, just because, don't ask me where I got it. Which also reminds me, here's a pro tip. I was working at a headquarters in Afghanistan, and we had multinational forces there, the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, Australia. So if you're curious how the Scots drink Scotch and what they drink, here it is. Highland Park 12 on a normal occasion, Highland Park 18 for special occasions. Split it 50-50 with water at room temperature. So there's your pro tip. I do remember walking the halls of the United States Capitol with the United States Senate Majority Leader, advising and assisting him in prioritizing over $500 million worth of funding requests. Commanding the United States Army Parachute Team, the Golden Knights, jumping next to Medal of Honor recipients, celebrities, teachers, and other leaders, along with my wife. Skydiving into the World Parachuting Championships in Menzelitz, Russia, something we probably couldn't do today. Being the drop zone safety officer in center field at Yankee Stadium, and then going to have a hot dog and lobster tails in Hal Steinbrenner's box. And facilitating the confirmation of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations, along with front row seats to almost every classified Benghazi hearing and the hearings on Extortion 1-7. I don't say this to impress you, but to impress upon you the amazing opportunities, education, and leadership that are available to the select few that are willing to join the United States military and volunteer for the most challenging assignments. But none of this would have been possible if I had quit. And so if there's one thing I could pass on to you tonight, never give up. Because if I had, I wouldn't be standing here. And there's one thing I'd ask you to share with the young people who may be in a position that you could influence them. Never give up. And so, in closing, thank you, Maryvale, for helping me to succeed beyond my dreams. God bless you. God bless the United States of America, and go Flyers. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for all of our inductees this evening. We'd now like to return the program back over to Mr. Joe Darling.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you to all of you.